Hello there, traveler. Settle in, breathe a little deeper, and let the world around you soften for a while. Tonight, we drift back through more than 1,000 years, to a moment when the world was quiet, too quiet, and no one knew that history was about to change forever. Before we begin, if you enjoy these gentle journeys through time, feel free to subscribe, only if it truly brings you calm. And tell me, if you'd like, where you're listening from tonight. I always find it comforting to know how many distant shores we share these stories with. Now, let your mind rest. Let the tide pull your thoughts slowly outward. And let us return to a northern dawn. Soft, gray, trembling with something unseen. The morning when the world held its breath. And there, at the edge of the North Sea, a dawn that never forgot begins. You stand at the edge of the North Sea, where the air tastes of salt and sleep, and the sky seems to hover between memory and awakening. The morning light gathers gently on the horizon, not in bright colors, but in muted strokes of gray and pale blue, as if the day itself hesitates before revealing its full shape. You feel the cool wind brushing across your cheeks, a quiet, steady breath that carries the smell of seaweed, distant rain, and the soft promise of something unknown. At this hour, before the world fully stirs, sound becomes its own kind of storytelling, and every ripple of the tide feels like the beginning of a tale older than language. You hear the waves pulling against the rocks, slow and patient, each movement shaped by centuries of repetition. They speak with a cadence that invites your thoughts to settle, to mirror their rhythm, to drift in steady, gentle motions. In the far distance, seabirds circle high above the water, their silhouettes faint against the gray-orange haze of early dawn. Their cries are softened by the wind, turning sharp notes into something almost melodic. You let the sound wash over you, and in that moment, you sense the world suspended in a fragile stillness. The year is 793, though the land around you does not yet know the meaning this date will carry. For now, it is simply another morning in a quiet chain of mornings, where monks on nearby islands prepare for prayer and fishermen along the coast mend their nets by habit, not urgency. The world feels stable, predictable, almost peacefully unremarkable. It is the kind of morning that asks nothing of you except to breathe, to listen, to remain present in the soft unfolding of light. Yet beneath this calm surface, you sense a faint tension, an unspoken shift in the air, like the quiet, invisible stirring of a tide about to change. You take another breath, and the wind brings with it the scent of wet wood and earth, mingling with the faint smoke of early fires burning in small villages tucked behind rolling dunes. Somewhere beyond the horizon, unseen hands are tightening ropes, adjusting sails, preparing longships for journeys that will reshape the story of the North. But here, where you stand, that knowledge comes not through sight but through feeling, an instinctive awareness that something approaches from beyond the edge of the visible world. The sea seems aware too. Its waves move with a strange deliberation, as though carrying secrets across the surface. Each swell rises and falls in a slow rhythm that mirrors the rhythm of your breath. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds blend into a single, soothing hum. The whisper of wind against water, the gentle pressure of footsteps in wet sand, the distant murmur of a waking world. When you open them again, the sky has grown slightly brighter, but the sun has not yet broken free of the horizon. The day pauses, gathering its strength. You imagine the monks of Lindisfarne at this same hour, their chants beginning to form in stone halls that echo with centuries of prayer. Their island lies not far from where you stand, quiet and serene, surrounded by cold water that reflects pale morning light. To them, this dawn feels no different from the last. They move with practiced calm, their robes brushing softly against worn floors, unaware that history is leaning toward them, closing the distance breath by breath. You feel a tenderness for their innocence, for the way they trust this stillness, believing it to be permanent. The North Sea has never promised permanence. It is a place of movement, of currents that shift with the moon and storms that rise without warning. You watch the water roll toward the shore, each wave carrying a hush that feels both comforting and expectant. The sea is like an ancient storyteller, patient and timeless, holding countless untold stories in its depths. This morning, One of those stories presses closer to the surface, ready to be carried westward by oars cutting through cold water. But for now, it remains hidden, wrapped in mist somewhere beyond your line of sight. The wind shifts slightly, colder now, carrying a distant echo that you can't fully name. Perhaps wood rubbing against wood, or the faint murmur of voices carried across miles of open sea. It is too soft to be certain, too fleeting to grasp, but enough to stir your awareness. You feel the world expanding subtly, as though the horizon is pushing inward, preparing to reveal something long in motion. You place your hand against a flat, sea-worn stone, feeling its chill, its solidity, its quiet endurance. It has witnessed more dawns than could ever be counted. It will witness this one too. You breathe deeply again, letting the scent of salt and earth settle inside you. The air around you seems to hold a question, gentle yet persistent. A question that has not yet found its answer. You listen, and the sea responds with another slow, steady surge, as if offering reassurance even while carrying change. A gull glides low over the water, wings stretched wide, tracing an effortless path that seems to blur the line between sky and sea. You follow its movement until it disappears into the early morning haze, swallowed by light that has not yet committed to full daybreak. The silence deepens, though it is not the silence of emptiness. It is a silence that feels full, heavy with possibility. You sense the world taking a breath, as though inhaling before speaking, before naming something new. In this pause, time feels elastic, stretching and softening. The boundary between past and future seems thinner here, as if you could reach through it with a single thought. The dawn holds its breath alongside you, waiting. Somewhere across the water, oars dip quietly into the sea. The movement is small, almost imperceptible at this distance. Yet its ripple will travel farther than any of the men holding those oars can imagine. But you do not see them yet. You feel only the faint shift in the air, the subtle change in the sea's rhythm, the quiet stir of a story beginning to rise. The sky brightens by a shade, and you watch as the first true hint of sun touches the horizon, thin and delicate like the stroke of a brush across untouched canvas. The North Sea glimmers faintly in response, as if greeting the light with a whispered promise. You sense that the world is about to turn a page, though the contours of the next chapter remain hidden in the soft veil of morning mist. You remain standing at the shoreline, listening to the breath of the sea, aware that this quiet is temporary, precious, and unforgettable. In the soft glow of dawn, history is already shifting its weight, preparing to step forward. And though you cannot yet see the long ships approaching, you feel the faint tremor of their presence, a distant, inevitable stirring across the water. This is the dawn that never forgets, and as the light slowly grows, you understand that nothing ahead will unfold without leaving its mark. You find yourself carried inland by the breath of the morning, away from the restless edge of the North Sea and toward an island wrapped in quiet devotion. The wind softens as you move, its salt fading into something gentler, something touched by incense and old stone. The sounds of the waves grow distant, replaced by the soft murmur of voices rising and falling like a tide of prayer. Lindisfarne lies before you, holy, still, unaware. The monastery stands with the humble strength of a place built for the soul rather than the sword. Thick stone walls, weathered by years of harsh winds, cradle a world shaped by early monks who crossed wild frontiers in search of silence. You walk beside them now, though they cannot see you, moving through their morning routines with a rhythm so steady it feels like breathing. Their sandals whisper across the cold floors, the leather worn smooth from countless steps taken in devotion. Inside the main hall, the air is warm with the scent of tallow candles and parchment. Rows of monks sit in simple benches, their heads bowed beneath hoods the color of dry earth. Their voices rise together in a gentle chant that seems to lift the dust motes drifting in shafts of morning light. The sound is low, steady, unhurried, a kind of music shaped not by instruments, but by the slow discipline of the heart. You feel it settle into you, calming your breath, anchoring your thoughts in the warmth of the moment. The walls are adorned not with gold or grand sculptures, but with quiet marks of devotion. Small wooden crosses, shells carried from faraway shores, manuscripts that rest like sleeping treasures on carved wooden stands. One monk runs his fingers lightly over the fragile edge of an illuminated page, the colors made from crushed minerals and patient hands. The image glows faintly in the dim light, a symbol of faith shaped by hours of silent, meticulous work. You can almost feel the warmth left by the monk who painted it seasons ago, his breath steady, his mind focused, his heart convinced that beauty itself was a form of prayer. Outside, the cloister garden stirs in the gentle breeze. Herbs grow in small, tidy plots, sage, thyme, winter savory, their leaves brushing against one another with soft, delicate sounds. Bees hum sleepily among them, moving from bloom to bloom with an unhurried calm that belongs only to places untouched by fear. You feel the peace of it settling around the stones, a kind of sacred stillness that seems to stretch outward into the surrounding fields. Beyond the garden, a lone monk tends to the geese that wander freely near the marsh. Their feathers shimmer with early light, and their movements are simple, purposeful, entirely unaware of any world beyond the island. The monk watches them with a small, patient smile, tapping his staff lightly against the ground to guide them. In his eyes you see the quiet pride of a man whose days are shaped by routine, a rhythm of care and contemplation. His world is small yet complete. As you walk further, you reach the scriptorium, the beating heart of the island's wisdom. The room glows with candlelight, illuminating the monks who bend over wooden desks, their quills scratching softly against parchment. Each stroke is slow, deliberate, as though they are carving thoughts into time itself. You watch the careful shaping of letters, the curling lines of Gaelic script that seem almost alive beneath the flicker of flames. It is a patient craft, a devotion not only to God, but to knowledge, to memory, to the belief that words can endure where bodies cannot. One monk pauses, leaning back to stretch his tired hands. His knuckles crack softly, the sound barely above a breath. He rubs his eyes, weary but content, then returns to his work with the steady discipline of someone who believes deeply in the worth of his labor. You notice the faint stains of ink on his cuffs, the quiet badge of a life spent preserving stories and teachings for those yet to come. Outside, the tide continues its slow retreat, revealing stretches of wet sand that glisten under the gray-blue sky. A few villagers from the nearby settlement cross the causeway carrying baskets of fish, their steps careful on the slippery stones. They offer their catch to the monastery as part of the morning's trade, receiving bread and herbs in return. Their voices carry through the air, soft greetings, small jokes, gentle laughter. The island's life feels woven from trust, simplicity, and the kind of peace that grows slowly when generations share the same ground. A young novice walks with a bundle of firewood in his arms, his steps uneven but eager. He glances up at the monastery towers with wide, hopeful eyes, as though imagining the years ahead of him, years of learning, of discipline, of belonging. You feel the innocence in his breath, the softness of his youth standing side by side with the weight of the vows he has chosen. His world is shaped by duty, but it is a duty embraced willingly, lovingly. The morning deepens, and sunlight spreads across the cloister like warm water. For a moment, everything seems suspended in golden stillness. The monks in their studies, the birds gliding above the marsh, the distant hum of prayers emerging from stone halls. The peace of Lindisfarne feels complete, wrapped in layers of tradition, devotion, and gentle repetition. It is a world so quiet, so full of trust, that the idea of danger feels as distant as the far northern ice. You walk along the edge of the island where grass meets sand, feeling the calm settle around you like a shawl. The sea lies stretched out in soft colors, barely moving, as though resting after a long night. Small ripples break against the shore in delicate patterns, each one fading quietly into the next. Nothing here suggests disruption. Nothing hints at the shape of the horizon beyond. And yet, as you breathe in the cool, steady air, there is a faint unease beneath the peace. Not loud, not clear, but present. A subtle sense that the world outside this island does not share the same rhythm. You feel it not in sight or sound, but in the quiet spaces between breaths, like a distant shift in whether too far away to see. The monks continue their tasks, unaware of the soft tremor building beyond their shores. Their voices rise again in prayer, gentle and unwavering, drifting across the island like threads of light. You listen, letting the calm sink deeper into you, and the moment stretches, pure, fragile, unforgettable. The peace holds, but beneath the surface of the world, something has already begun to move across the sea. You feel the world shift beneath your feet as the soft calm of Lindisfarne fades like a dream dissolving in morning light. The sea air thickens with cold, sharper winds, and before you realize it, you are carried far from the holy island and into the raw northern vastness of early Scandinavia. The horizon grows taller, the waves stronger, and the land rises in sheer, silent walls of stone. Norway appears before you in wild, sweeping shapes, fjords carved by ancient ice, cliffs that stand like guardians against the shifting sky, and water so deep it holds winter even in summer. You breathe in the cold air, rich with the scent of pine resin, iron, and the distant smoke of hearth fires tucked between outcrops of rock. This is a land where the sea is not a boundary, but a lifeline, a restless companion that demands courage and rewards those willing to follow it. You feel the weight of that truth in the wind itself, pressing softly against your skin. Along the rocky shore, you see small clusters of wooden homes leaning toward the shelter of the mountains. Their roofs are layered with turf and smoke stains, their walls patched from seasons of storms. Children run along the paths with bare feet, their laughter sharp and bright against the roar of the waves. Their world is simple, but it is not easy. The land gives enough to survive, but not enough to grow. The soil is thin, the winters unforgiving, and the harvests uncertain. You feel their resilience shaped not by choice but necessity. Inside one of the longhouses, warmth gathers in slow, smoky currents. A fire crackles, sending sparks toward the rafters darkened by years of cooking smoke. Families sit close, wrapped in furs, sharing bowls of fish stew thickened with barley. A woman mends a fishing net with steady hands, her movements rhythmic and practiced. A man sharpens a knife, testing the edge with a quiet nod. Their faces carry the marks of lives lived against the wind, cheeks reddened by cold, brows creased by worry, eyes bright with endurance. You watch a young man sitting alone near the door, carving a piece of driftwood into the shape of a small bird. His eyes drift often toward the water beyond the threshold, as though something in him is already out on the waves. His breath is slow, steady, but there is restlessness beneath it, a desire to see what lies beyond the narrow inlets and jagged coastlines he has known since birth. You sense that he is not alone in this feeling. It hums quietly through the entire settlement, like an unspoken question waiting for someone brave enough to answer. Outside, the wind carries the creak of wood, the sound of longships under repair. You walk toward the shoreline, where several men work together beside a hull raised on wooden supports. Their hands move with the familiarity of inherited craft, shaping planks of pine and oak with axes polished smooth from generations of use. They fit each board by feel as much as sight, binding them with iron rivets forged in small fires that crackle in the cold air. The ship takes shape slowly, its curves elegant despite the rough surroundings, like a creature born to move with the sea rather than against it. The men speak rarely as they work. Their silence is not heavy, but purposeful. You sense pride in their movements not for themselves, but for the people who will depend on this vessel. Families, traders, explorers, perhaps warriors. Each strike of the axe carries a decision, a future, a promise. You notice how their eyes flick now and then toward the open water, as though imagining the ship gliding across that vast expanse of gray-blue. The sea here is not gentle. It snarls against the rocks, throwing itself forward in white bursts of cold spray. It is strong, unpredictable, and deeply alive. Yet, to these people, it is not something to fear. It is something to respect, something to learn from, something to travel upon when the land cannot give enough. You feel their relationship with the water, not one of dominance, but of balance, of necessity, of curiosity. As you wander further along the fjord, you come across a gathering of elders seated on flat stones arranged in a loose circle. Their clothes are thicker, their hair touched with gray, their eyes steady and alert. They speak in low voices, discussing matters of survival, the thinness of the last harvest, the growing difficulty of winter hunting, the stories of richer lands to the west where monasteries hold silver, books, livestock, and stores of grain. They are not men hungry for violence. They are men faced with choices, endure the risk of famine or seek opportunity beyond the waves. Their words are measured, spoken with the weight of responsibility. They know the sea is dangerous, but so is staying. You hear one man speak of a neighbor who sailed to distant islands years ago and returned with furs and ornaments never seen before. Another speaks of a merchant who traded with distant shores and claimed that the lands there are softer, the people fewer, the guards less vigilant. Whether truth or rumor, the possibilities shimmer in the cold air like distant firelight. You see young men listening at the edges of the circle, their expressions shaped by both hope and fear. They want to believe in something beyond the narrow hardships of their daily lives. They want to feel the pull of the whale road, the ancient name they give to the deep paths carved across the sea by wind, current, and memory. To them, the ocean is a road with no markings, no borders, no rulers, only possibility. The elders rise, their decision not spoken directly but understood by all who watch. Preparations will begin soon. Quietly, without ceremony, without the need for grand speeches. Because these choices are not born from ambition, they are born from survival, from curiosity, from the simple truth that sometimes the only way to stay alive is to move. As the day wanes, the sky shifts into a deeper shade of blue, and lanterns flicker in small windows across the settlement. People gather for evening meals, sharing stories and small comforts. But beneath their voices lies a subtle pulse, a collective breath that seems to draw in the scent of the sea. You feel it, a readiness, a tremor of anticipation that stretches from house to shore. The tide rises quietly, brushing against the stones with a sound like soft whispering. The longship's hull gleams faintly in the fading light, its shape promising both danger and discovery. You stand beside it, feeling the cool wood under your fingertips, sensing the journeys it will soon carry. The whale road waits patiently beyond the fjord's narrow mouth, its expanse stretching toward the unseen west. And in the hearts of those who live along its edge, the first whispers have already begun. You stand again in the north, far from the gentle rhythms of holy shores, surrounded by a landscape carved from stone, wind, and long winters. The air is colder here, sharper, carrying the scent of pine forests and the distant tang of iron-rich earth. You feel the ground beneath you, uneven, rocky, reluctant to give life. It is a land that offers little without effort and takes back just as quickly when seasons turn. The soil is thin, the summers brief. Even at their warmest, the fields seem to hold their breath, unsure whether the sun will nurture them or abandon them early. Farmers rise before dawn, their footsteps slow but determined, moving over land that demands their strength without promise. You watch them bend over fields of barley and rye, coaxing growth from earth that freezes nearly half the year. Their hands are calloused, their brows marked by years of struggle under a sky that seldom softens. A woman lifts a handful of soil and lets it fall through her fingers. She studies its texture, its dryness, the way it clings to her palms. She understands what must be done because she has lived this battle every season of her life. She calls to her children, showing them how to clear stones from the field, how to wrap young seedlings in moss to keep the wind from them. Her voice is steady, patient, shaped by a truth she carries without complaint. Survival is earned here, never given. Beyond the farms, deep forests stretch like dark waves frozen in place. The trees are tall but sparse, their roots twisted around rock and ice. Hunters move quietly through them, stepping over patches of lingering snow even in spring. Their breath fogs the air as they scan the shadows for deer, elk, and the small, quick animals that hide beneath the underbrush. Their bows are simple, their arrows handmade, each one precious. They follow tracks that speak in faint, broken patterns. A hoof print softened by frost, a snapped twig, a tuft of fur caught on a branch. You hear their stomachs growl before you see the hunger in their eyes. A missed shot can mean more than an empty evening. It can mean a winter night without warmth. The forest teaches patience, and it teaches loss. Some days, hunters return with nothing but cold bones and tired steps. Yet they rise again the next morning, gripping their weapons, whispering to themselves that tomorrow might be kinder. Winter is the true ruler of this land. You feel its presence even in seasons when the snow has melted. It lingers in the wind, in the silence that settles over the mountains, in the hard lines of the people's faces. When winter arrives, the fjords freeze around the edges, and the skies turn the color of old steel. The cold seeps into longhouses despite the fires burning day and night. Families huddle together beneath firs, sharing warmth, sharing breath, sharing hope. Inside one longhouse, you watch people ration their food carefully. A pot of fish stew is passed around, each person taking only what they need. Children learn early not to ask for more. They hear the adults speak quietly about the storehouse, about the barrels of dried fish, the small sacks of grain, the dwindling supply of vegetables grown months before. Each bite is measured with the knowledge that winter may last longer than expected. At the far end of the hall, an elder sits with a small wooden cup of ale in his hands. His beard is thick and silver, his voice low as he speaks to the younger men gathered near him. He tells them of years when the sea ice came early, when storms destroyed boats before they reached the fishing grounds, when entire harvests were lost to unexpected frost. He does not speak these memories to frighten them, but to remind them of the truth. Hardship is not a visitor here. It is part of life itself. You feel the weight of their listening. The young men's eyes are steady, yet beneath their calm lies an ember of restlessness. They have heard stories of warmer lands, of richer shores, of monasteries filled with silver and stocked with grain. They know their fathers and grandfathers survived by hunting, fishing, trading, but survival is no longer enough. Hunger has a way of sharpening ambition, turning curiosity into necessity. Along the coast, fishermen return with nets that are sometimes full and sometimes nearly empty. They drag their boats onto the pebbled shore, their bodies tired from battling waves that rise without warning. They speak quietly to one another, voices softened by the exhaustion of long days spent fighting the sea. Their faces brighten only slightly when a good catch spills across the stones. Even abundance feels temporary here. At night, when the fires burn low and the cold presses against the walls, the people talk about distant lands. Rumors drift through the halls like thin smoke, stories carried by merchants, travelers, and sailors who have braved the unknown. Stories of islands across the sea where fields grow thick and green, where the air is warmer, where treasures lie unguarded in wooden chests. You see the way these stories ignite something inside the listeners, something deeper than hunger. Hope, longing, possibility. And yet, this is not a land of dreamers. It is a land of doers, a land that teaches its people to build, to adapt, to endure. When the soil gives too little, they turn to the sea. When the sea grows dangerous, they turn to the forests. When all of these fail at once, they look beyond the horizon, not out of greed, but because their survival demands it. You understand now why the longships matter. They are not just vessels. They are answers. They are the shape of the northern will made into wood. They are escape, opportunity, and defiance against a world that has offered these people more struggle than comfort. As the wind rises again, carrying the chill of the northern peaks, you feel the truth settle inside you like a stone. Hardship does not break them. It sharpens them, teaches them to look outward, to move, to seek. And somewhere along the rocky shore, as flames flicker inside longhouses and hunger whispers through the walls, the first quiet decisions are being made. You walk toward the shoreline where the sea meets stone and smoke drifts like pale ribbon through the cold morning air. Here, along a curve of the fjord, the heartbeat of the north grows loud and purposeful. You smell the resin before you see the wood. You hear the rhythmic thud of axes before you see the men who wield them. This is where the longships are born, not in silence, but in a steady music of creation that has echoed through generations. The shipyard is simple, carved into the landscape rather than built upon it. Logs lie stacked in careful piles, stripped of bark and waiting to be shaped. Tools rest atop wooden stumps polished smooth by years of use. Fires crackle in small pits where iron rivets heat until they glow red. The men who work here move with the confidence of those who know that their skills are more than craft. They are legacy. Their hands do not hesitate. Their eyes measure length and curve with instinct rather than calculation. You step closer and watch as one shipwright studies a long, straight piece of pine. He lifts it, testing its weight, feeling the flexibility hidden within its grain. He does not rush. His movements speak of respect. Respect for the tree it came from. Respect for the men who will trust their lives to what he builds. Respect for the sea that will judge every mistake. He nods once, satisfied, and sets it aside for the keel. The keel is always the beginning. You watch as they lay it down gently, as though placing a spine upon the earth. It is the first breath of a longship, a line that will decide the strength and balance of everything that follows. They secure it between wooden braces, stepping back to examine its straightness from multiple angles. The morning light glints off the smooth surface, revealing tiny waves in the grain. These men read with the way monks read manuscripts, slowly, reverently, with practiced eyes. Once the keel rests steady, the ribs begin to rise from it like the first bones of a creature yet to be named. Each rib is bent using heat and sea water, softened until it curves with the fluid grace of a wave. The shipwrights move around it like dancers in slow, deliberate motion. One pours hot water over the wood, steam curling upward into the cold air. Another presses the bend carefully, listening for the faint crack that would mean failure. But there is no crack, only the soft creak of the rib yielding, shaping itself into the arc the ship demands. You feel the warmth of the steam against your skin, mingling with the chill of the wind, creating a moment of balanced contrast that matches what you see. Strength and fragility, patience and force, human will shaping nature without breaking it. Plank by plank, the hull begins to grow. Each piece is cut thin, lighter than you expected, but when overlapped in the ancient clinker style, they form a body that will flex with the sea rather than fight against it. You run your fingers lightly across one finished plank, feeling the smoothness left by hours of scraping and polishing. The wood is warm from the sun, warm from the hands that shaped it. It feels alive. Nearby, a young apprentice works beside an older shipwright with a beard the color of frost. The boy's hands tremble slightly as he holds a tool, his movements unsteady but eager. The elder places a reassuring hand over the boy's, guiding the stroke of the blade. You sense the passing of knowledge, not through words, but through touch, through shared breath and shared motion. One generation teaching the next how to build the vessels that will carry their families, their future, their stories. You look back at the ship rising slowly from the ground, and you marvel at its elegance even in this early stage. The curve of the bow hints at confidence. The narrowing stern promises speed. The shape itself whispers of possibilities. It is not just a boat. It is a bridge between the known and the unknown. A group of women approaches the shipyard carrying baskets of food for the workers. They set them down, offering bread, salted fish, and warm broth. Their presence adds a softness to the sounds of tools and timber, a reminder that the ships belong not only to men but to entire communities. Children run ahead of them, playing between the log piles, pretending to row imaginary oars. Their laughter feels light against the deeper sounds around you. The shipwrights pause to eat, sitting on overturned logs or the edges of workbenches. Their faces are flushed from labor, their breaths heavy but content. They speak quietly, sharing memories of storms survived, of voyages taken with fathers and uncles, of the first time they ever stepped into a longship. You hear pride in their voices, not loud or boastful, but grounded. A pride shaped by living in a harsh land and learning to master its challenges with ingenuity rather than force. When their meal ends, they return to work with renewed focus. Rivets hiss as they are hammered hot into place. Wooden mallets tap in steady rhythm. Resin fills the air again, thick and sweet, sealing the seams that must keep out the cold sea. You notice how everything they do, every test of the wood, Every correction of a curve, every smoothing of a rough edge, is done with the awareness that lives will depend on these choices. As the sun moves across the sky, shadows stretch over the shipyard, drawing long lines across the half-finished vessel. The fjord's surface glimmers gold for a brief moment before the wind disturbs it again. The shipwrights do not slow. Their work is guided by daylight, but their dedication is guided by something older. A memory carved into the bones of their people. A memory of the sea as both provider and destroyer. By late afternoon, the hull stands proudly, its shape unmistakable now. You walk slowly around it, feeling its presence the way you would feel the presence of a large, calm animal. It is sturdy yet graceful, strong yet responsive. You sense that once it touches the sea, it will move with a kind of intelligence, as though it remembers the waves it came from. A final plank is fitted into place with a satisfying thud. The shipwrights step back, wiping sweat from their brows, their faces lit with the quiet satisfaction of work well done. They stand in a loose circle around the vessel, not speaking, simply looking. In their eyes you see a mixture of exhaustion, pride, and wonder. For even though they have built many ships, each one feels like a new beginning. The longship rests on the shore like a dream ready to open. Its bow points toward the water, and though it has not yet touched the sea, you feel its anticipation, its readiness. The fjord seems to sense it too. The wind grows softer, the waves calmer, as if the world is giving the ship space to breathe. You lean your hand against the hull, feeling the warmth of sunlight trapped in the wood. You sense the journeys it will carry, the lives that will depend on its strength, the stories that will unfold upon its deck. This ship is more than a vessel. It is destiny shaped by human hands, by centuries of need, by the relentless will of a people who have learned to listen to timber, wind, and sea. And as the cold northern breeze moves gently across the yard, the longship seems to exhale, a quiet, almost living sound, as though it knows its time is coming. You stand on the rocky shore as dawn stretches pale fingers across the fjord, turning the still water into a canvas of silver gray. The longship rests at the edge of the tide, its hull gleaming softly in the morning light. It looks both powerful and vulnerable at once, like a creature that belongs to both land and sea but is fully at home in neither. Around it, the first crew gathers in quiet preparation, their faces carrying the weight of what lies ahead. Men move with careful purpose, adjusting ropes, checking gear, securing provisions wrapped in cloth and leather. Their breath fogs in the cold air, rising like faint ghosts before dissolving into the wind. You can sense the mix of emotions within them, excitement pressed tightly against fear, hope shadowed by uncertainty. They do not speak much. Words feel too small for a moment like this. A young man standing near the bow tightens the strap of his cloak, his fingers trembling slightly, though he tries to hide it. His gaze lingers on the mountains behind him, the steep, familiar cliffs of home. You feel the heaviness in his thoughts, the quiet realization that he may never see these ridges again. Yet his jaw sets with determination, not because he is fearless, but because he understands why he must go. The older crew members move with steadier hands. They have lived through winters that stole too much and seasons that gave too little. They know the sea is not always cruel, yet never kind without reason. Experience has taught them that survival favors those who dare, not those who wait. When they look toward the open water, it is not with wide-eyed wonder but with the calm acceptance of men who understand that life itself is a voyage. A low command is spoken, quiet but firm. The time has come. You watch as they position themselves along the hull, pressing their shoulders into the wood polished by hands and hope. Their boots sink into the wet sand as they push. At first, the longship barely moves. It resists, as if reluctant to leave the land that shaped it. Then, with a slow groan and a soft grinding of keel against stone, it slides forward. The men push again, harder this time, their muscles straining, their breath rising in sharp bursts. The ship gives way. Water greets its bow with a soft roar, curling around the wood as though welcoming something long awaited. A wave washes over the sand, soaking the men's feet and pulling the vessel gently from their grasp. The longship floats, Oars are distributed, each one long, slender, and smooth beneath rough hands. The men climb aboard, stepping with a reverence that surprises you, as if they are entering a sacred space. The deck creaks under their weight, settling into the water like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. You feel the shift in the air as they take their positions along the benches, shoulders squared, back straight. For a moment, nothing moves except the soft sway of the ship on the tide. The crew sits in silence, looking at one another, sharing small nods of reassurance that speak louder than any words. You can feel the bond between them, men tied together by shared hardship, shared hope, shared necessity. Then the first oar dips into the water. The sound is soft, a whisper more than a splash, but it changes everything. One stroke becomes two, then three, each movement syncing with the one beside it. The rhythm grows steady, shaped by breath and muscle. The longship cuts through the water, its bow rising over small waves like a creature awakening with purpose. The fjord narrows around you, towering cliffs casting shifting shadows over the deck. The water deepens to a darker shade of blue, reflecting the cold sky above. The oars move in perfect harmony now, a living heartbeat of wood and will. You listen to the creaking thrum of the ship's ribs, to the murmur of wind slipping between the oar blades, to the low chanting hum some of the men carry under their breath to ease the fear within them. The shoreline recedes slowly. You watch as homes become small shapes against the mountain slopes, as smoke from morning fires thins into distant threads. Children wave from the rocks, their voices faint but bright. A few women stand with hands clasped tightly, their expressions caught between pride and worry. The ship doesn't turn back. It moves steadily forward, guided by something deeper than courage, by the ancient pull of the whale road. As the fjord widens, the wind strengthens. It pushes against your face, carrying the crisp scent of open water. The sea grows darker, deeper, filled with unseen power. The men pause to raise the mast, working together in a practiced dance of ropes and wooden beams. When the sail unfurls, its woolen surface catches the wind with a great billowing breath. The ship surges forward, faster now, slicing cleanly across the deepening blue. The oars lift from the water and rest along the hull. The crew settles into new tasks, some checking the sail's tension, others adjusting their grip on the ropes that anchor it. One man stands near the stern, steadying the rudder with a firm, experienced hand. His gaze is fixed not on the land behind them but on the horizon ahead, where sky meets sea in a thin, uncertain line. You follow his gaze. The open water stretches endlessly, vast and shifting. There are no landmarks, no promises, no guarantees. Only the deep breath of the ocean, carrying both danger and discovery. You feel the uncertainty in your chest, a quiet tremor, not of fear, but of awe. This is a moment suspended between what is known and what is possible. The ship rocks gently, adjusting to the rhythm of the larger waves. The men settle into silence, their bodies swaying naturally with the movement. Some rest their heads back, letting the wind cool the sweat on their brows. Others look down at their hands, studying the calluses formed by years of labor. Their thoughts drift quietly, each man imagining what may lie across the waters. Wealth, land, opportunity, survival. Hours pass. The coastline grows faint, blurring into mist. The mountains soften into memory. All that remains is the open sea, shimmering under shifting light. The longship rides it steadily, its wooden frame flexible enough to bend, strong enough to endure. You sense that the sea is testing it, feeling its weight, its balance, its courage. The ship answers with quiet confidence, moving as though it was always meant to travel this path. The wind carries new smells now: brine, seaweed, the faint sweetness of distant currents. The men breathe deeper, shoulders relaxing as the rhythm of the voyage settles into their bones. Conversations begin in low voices. Laughter rises occasionally, soft but genuine. Someone hums an old melody, and a few others join, turning it into a simple, soothing song carried by the wind. The longship glides through the open water, small against the vastness, yet bold in its purpose. You feel the pulse of the journey deepening, not in sudden bursts, but in steady, quiet resolve. These men are venturing toward a world they cannot see, trusting the craftsmanship beneath them and the strength within them. As the sky shifts toward evening, the light dims into gentle shades of gold and pale blue. The sea grows calm, smoothing itself like a sheet of polished stone. You watch the sail breathe in the wind, full and steady, pulling the ship forward with unwavering grace. The shore is gone now, and the day grows quiet. The ocean opens before them, wide, mysterious, waiting. The journey has begun, and the longship moves toward the unknown with a courage carved from hunger, hope, and the unbreakable will of the North. Night settles over the longship like a soft cloak, cool and shimmering beneath the touch of a rising moon. You feel the shift in the air as daylight fades into a gentle blue-gray darkness that stretches across the water. The sea grows calm, smoothing itself into long, glassy swells that lift the ship with slow, deliberate breaths. It is a peaceful night, the kind that feels almost unreal after the restless days of rowing and the sharp winds of open water. The men sit quietly along the benches, their oars resting beside them, their bodies swaying with the rhythm of the waves. Fatigue clings to them like mist, but it is a peaceful weariness, softened by the ease of motion and the coolness of the evening. You hear the sound of their breathing, steady, slow, blending so naturally with the hush of the sea that it becomes difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. Above them, the sky expands into a vast, star-filled dome. The constellations glitter like ancient runes carved across the heavens, each one guiding the longship forward with a silent promise of direction. The North Star burns brightest, fixed and unwavering, a small point of certainty in a world that offers little. The steersman glances at it often, his hand steady on the rudder, his gaze calm and sure. He does not speak. He simply listens, to the water, to the wind, to the quiet voice of the sky. A soft breeze sweeps across the deck, carrying the scent of salt and faraway shores. It rustles through the sail, making it flutter gently like the wing of a great bird gliding low above the waves. The sound is soothing, rhythmic, steady. You close your eyes for a moment, letting it wash over you, letting it lull your thoughts into slower movements. When you open them again, the moon has climbed higher, painting a pale, luminous path across the water's surface. Some of the crew murmur to one another in low tones, their voices little more than breath. They speak of families back home, wives weaving wool by firelight, children running barefoot along the rocky shores, elders sitting beside hearths telling stories of winters long past. Their words carry warmth, nostalgia, a quiet longing. Yet none speak with regret. They chose this journey knowing what it meant, understanding that the sea asks for sacrifices even when it offers opportunity. Others simply sit in silence, hands clasped loosely on their knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. Their thoughts drift outward like the tide, slow, quiet, uncertain. They know the sea can change without warning, but tonight, it is gentle. Tonight, it allows them to rest. You move toward the bow, where a young man sits alone, his gaze deep and distant. The moonlight glimmers in the salt tangled in his hair. He runs his fingers across the wood of the railing, tracing the grain as though memorizing its texture. In his eyes, you see the weight of the journey, the fear he hides, the hope he carries, the questions he keeps to himself. He tilts his head back slightly, looking at the stars with a kind of reverence. They have guided his ancestors. Now they guide him. Time passes slowly in the quiet. The sea remains calm, its voice no more than a whisper. The longship glides forward as though carried not by wind but by the soft pull of the night itself. The men's bodies relax, shoulders loosen, hands unclench. A few close their eyes, not entirely asleep but drifting in and out of the gentle rhythm around them. The calm is almost unsettling in its perfection, the kind of peacefulness that feels fragile, as if one stray breath could break it. But no one speaks of this. They simply accept it, grateful for the moment of stillness the sea has given them. You feel it too, the way the world seems to pause, the way the water moves like silk beneath the hull, the way the moon hangs motionless above them. A soft splash breaks the silence. A fish leaps near the ship, its silver body catching the moonlight before disappearing back into the deep. Ripples spread outward in circles, distorting the reflection of the stars. The men look up briefly, offering small smiles. Even the smallest signs of life feel meaningful out here, far from land. One of the older crew members begins to hum quietly, a melody worn smooth by time. It is slow, almost mournful, but there is comfort in it, like the sound of a cradle rocking. Others join, their voices low and steady, blending into the night until the song becomes part of the sea itself. The tune drifts across the water, a thread of sound carried by the wind. The longship continues forward, pushed by the steady breath of the breeze. Hours slip by unnoticed. The moon dips lower, casting longer reflections on the waves. The world grows even quieter, as if holding itself in gentle suspense. The air thickens slightly, cooler now, brushing against your skin with an edge that was not there before. You inhale, and the night tastes different, heavier, tinged with something that feels like waiting. The wind shifts ever so slightly, carrying a faint change in tone, a whisper of something distant but approaching. The men sense it too, though none speak. Their heads lift a little, their eyes scanning the darkness. It is nothing they can name, nothing visible, but it is there. The water remains calm. The sky remains clear. The stars continue their patient watch. Yet beneath this perfect stillness, the world feels as though it is gathering breath. The longship moves onward, silent and small beneath the vast northern sky, carried through a peace so delicate that even the sea seems to hesitate before breaking it. Morning settles over Lindisfarne with a softness that feels almost otherworldly. You open your eyes to a world muted by mist, the island wrapped in a pale veil that blurs stone, sand, and sky into one quiet breath. The air is cool and damp, clinging gently to your skin, carrying the delicate scent of seaweed and wet earth. It is a morning built for contemplation, for prayer, for slow steps and quiet hearts. The monastery rises through the haze like a memory taking shape, its stone walls softened by the damp air, its wooden doors dark with dew. You hear the faint echo of chanting drifting from within, a steady, low hum that weaves with the wind. The voices of the monks are calm and measured, shaped by habit, shaped by devotion, shaped by years of days just like this one. Their world feels untouched, anchored in faith and simplicity. You walk through the courtyard, stones slick with moisture, each footstep leaving a faint print that fades almost instantly. Moss glows green in the cracks, fed by the long northern nights and the gentle rainfall. Birds hop along the edges of the path, their feathers puffed against the chill. They chirp softly, unconcerned, unhurried, as though this morning belongs entirely to them. Beyond the walls, the island's marshlands stretch out in pale colors, the grasses bending under the weight of the mist. Patches of water glisten like small mirrors scattered across the ground, reflecting the faint shapes of the sky. Cattle graze in silence, their dark forms barely visible, moving slowly as though lulled by the calm. Everything feels suspended, as if time itself has chosen to move more gently here. Inside the monastery, the monks gather in the chapel for morning prayers. Candles flicker along the stone ledges, their flames trembling but steady. The warm glow softens the shadows and warms the faces of the men who bow their heads, their hands clasped loosely before them. Their voices rise in a single stream of sound, quiet, unbroken, unwavering. The sound feels ancient, timeless, crafted from generations of prayers spoken in hope rather than fear. A young novice stands at the back, his eyes slightly heavy with sleep, yet filled with a quiet reverence. He mouths the words softly, glancing at the elders with admiration. His world is small but meaningful, shaped by ritual and routine, by the comfort of knowing what each day will bring. His thoughts drift not toward danger or uncertainty, but toward the tasks of the morning. Tending the garden, mending a torn robe, copying a new line of scripture into a parchment that has waited patiently for ink. When the prayers end, the monks rise and move through the hall in calm procession. Their robes whisper against the floor, their steps light and unhurried. You follow them into the scriptorium, where the air smells of parchment and ink. Here, hours pass in silence as careful hands craft letters that will outlast lifetimes. Each stroke of the quill is deliberate, prayerful, carved from devotion rather than ambition. A monk sits near a window, tracing the outline of an illuminated border on a page. His face is serene, lit by the pale light that filters through the mist-covered glass. He pauses occasionally to dip his quill into ink, then continues the slow work, building beauty from patience. The world outside may be shifting, but inside these walls, time flows with the gentleness of a quiet river. Outside, the mist thickens along the shoreline. The sea beyond the island has not yet revealed itself, but you can hear it, the faint crash of distant waves, muffled by the fog. The tide creeps inward, frothing softly at the edge of the sand, leaving ribbons of foam that slowly fade. Gulls circle high above, their wings cutting through the haze like pale arrows. A fisherman walks toward the water with a woven basket in his arms. His boots leave deep marks in the wet sand, each step forming little pools around his heels. He pauses to adjust his cloak, pulling the wool tighter around his shoulders. The chill of the morning seems deeper than usual, as though the sea breathes out a colder kind of wind. He notices it, but thinks little of it. The North Sea is full of moods, and this is merely one of them. Back on the island's narrow paths, two monks cross from the garden to the granary, speaking softly about the state of the winter stores. Their voices drift across the mist like threads of sound, weaving briefly around you before fading. They talk of onions drying on racks, fish salted and stored in barrels, the hope that the coming season will be mild. Their concerns are simple, practical, shaped by the cycles of the land rather than the pull of the horizon. A small group of boys chases each other near the outskirts of the settlement, their laughter bright against the hush. One slips slightly in the dew and laughs even louder, brushing mud from his tunic. Their joy feels fragile, like something that belongs only to calm mornings such as this. They do not look toward the sea. Their world is measured in steps taken across fields, in games played beneath the watchful eyes of teachers and elders. You walk toward the high ground overlooking the eastern shore, where grass bends under the weight of the morning mist. From here, the island seems smaller, as though the fog has folded it inward, hiding its outer edges from view. The sea beyond is a blank expanse of white and gray, silent and unknowable. It feels distant, but not entirely absent, as though something lies behind the curtain of mist waiting for the right moment to appear. A monk climbs the hill beside you, his breath forming soft clouds in the air. He carries a wooden staff worn smooth from years of use. He pauses at the top, scanning the horizon with gentle curiosity rather than concern. The island has been peaceful for as long as he has lived. Its threats come not from men or ships, but from storms, famine, or illness. He listens to the wind, whispers a short prayer under his breath, and descends again, content in the morning's stillness. The mist swirls lightly, shifting with each breeze. For a moment, it thins, revealing a stretch of open water beyond the shoals. The light glints faintly on the surface, catching your eye like a shimmer of polished stone. Then the fog folds back in, hiding everything once more. The island wakes slowly. Fires are lit. Bread is baked. Tools are sharpened. Livestock are fed. The rhythms of everyday life continue, guided by tradition, ignorance, and trust. No eyes search the horizon. No hearts beat faster with warning. The world remains quiet, lulled by the illusion that days like this will last forever. The mist holds the island gently, as though cradling it in a moment of peace that feels deeper than the sea itself. But somewhere beyond that soft, shifting veil, the faint sound of oars touches the water, too distant to hear, too quiet to break the calm, shaping a truth the island is not yet ready to see. The mist clings to the shoreline like a living thing, drifting in soft swirls that blur every shape it touches. The morning is still quiet, still gentle, still wrapped in the pale calm that has followed Lindisfarne for centuries. Yet beneath that calm, something begins to stir. A presence moving through the fog, unseen but undeniable. You stand at the eastern edge of the island where the tide pulls softly at the sand. The world feels muted. Even the gulls are silent, perched on rocks slick with dew. They look outward toward the water, restless wings half furled, as though sensing something that has not yet revealed its form. The air is heavy with anticipation, but no one on the island knows why. The sound comes first, a distant, rhythmic dip of wood into water, soft, suppressed, almost careful. At first, it mingles with the whispering tide and disappears. Then it returns, clearer this time, as though the sea is carrying it closer on purpose. Oars, slow, steady, deliberate. The fishermen on the shore do not notice. They are busy sorting through their morning catch, choosing which nets need mending, which fish should be salted before the sun rises higher. Their hands move by habit, their thoughts on simple things, the weather, the tide, the winter to come. None look toward the mist. None imagine danger hiding inside it. You glance toward the water again, and this time the fog shifts just enough to reveal a shape, long, narrow, almost spectral. Its bow rises from the mist like the carved head of a creature emerging from deep sleep. Then the hull follows, then the mast, then the faint silhouettes of men rowing in practiced silence. The longship glides forward without hesitation. This presence feels unreal at first, like something conjured by imagination. But it is real. Its wooden sides are dark with seawater, its lines sleek, its movement fluid. The oars lift and fall in unison, cutting the water with precision. You feel the weight of the craftsmanship, the purpose behind the journey, the determination carved into every stroke. The men aboard the vessel appear as shadows, their faces blurred by the mist. But even from a distance, you sense the tension in their posture, a readiness shaped by hunger, by ambition, by the pull of lands they have never seen. Their breaths come in quiet clouds, their eyes fixed on the pale outline of the island ahead. The longship slows as it nears the shallow waters. The oars lift, the hull drifts, sand grinds softly beneath the keel. For a moment, the island remains unaware. Then the first man steps over the side, landing barefoot on foreign soil. His foot sinks into wet sand, leaving a clear, deliberate footprint, the first mark of the north on this gentle shore. He pauses, scanning the land with sharp, assessing eyes. He is not cruel by nature, but he carries the weight of a people hardened by scarcity. His breath rises in slow, measured plumes as he gauges the distance to the monastery, the movement of villagers, the terrain between water and stone. Behind him, more men descend, one by one, each landing with the same quiet, controlled intent. They do not speak. They do not call out. They move with the certainty of those who know that their moment has come. You watch as they lift their shields from the ship, each one round and heavy, painted in faint earth tones that blend with the mist. Axes hang at their belts, simple but sharp. Spears gleam softly where metal catches the muted morning light. Their clothes are worn from travel, their hair damp with salt, their expressions carved from the cold discipline of the sea. They form a loose line near the surf. Some scan the shoreline. Others look toward the village where thin trails of smoke begin to rise from cooking fires. A few glance back toward the longship, ensuring it remains grounded and ready, in case their return must be swift. For a brief moment, there is stillness. The fishermen at last notice movement where none should be. One straightens slowly, his hands frozen around a net that drips seawater onto his boots. He squints through the fog, eyes struggling to make sense of the shapes walking toward him. Confusion knits his brow. Then realization floods his face. A realization so sudden and sharp that he stumbles backward, dropping the net. You hear his breath catch. His voice cracks as he calls out, the first alarm slicing through the morning quiet like a blade through cloth. The Vikings move instantly. They surge forward in quick, decisive strides, feet splashing through shallow water, weapons rising with practiced efficiency. Their movements are not wild or chaotic. They are precise, honed by necessity. The fisherman turns to run, slipping on the wet sand, shouting toward the village with a voice that trembles with fear. His cry spreads fast. Monks in the courtyard pause mid-step. Villagers carrying baskets turn their heads sharply. A novice exiting the scriptorium freezes, ink dripping from his quill onto the stone floor. For one suspended moment, everyone listens, to the alarm, to the change in tone of the morning, to the unfamiliar rhythm of approaching feet. Then panic blooms. Women pull children close. Men reach for tools that might serve as makeshift weapons, a rake, a wooden staff, a dull knife. The monks gather with wide, frightened eyes, their world of prayer and parchment suddenly invaded by a reality they do not understand. You feel the shift in the air, the sharpness of fear, the weight of disbelief. Lindisfarne has known hardship, but never like this. Never the sudden arrival of men who move with purpose carved from hunger and survival. The Vikings reach the first of the fishermen. Their eyes are not filled with rage but with the urgency of men who cannot afford hesitation. They push past him toward the inland path, their boots jolting over the wet ground, their axes held low but ready. Their breath is steady, their focus unwavering. They do not shout, they do not boast, they act. A group splits off toward the cluster of small huts near the beach, searching for valuables, food, tools, anything that could ease the long seasons back home. The rest continue toward the monastery, the largest structure on the island, its silhouette a dark shape rising through the thinning haze. Inside the monastery walls, monks scramble to gather relics, scrolls, anything sacred. Their hands shake as they lift heavy books, their sandals sliding on the damp floor. A bell begins to ring, not in celebration, but in warning, its hollow toll echoing across the island in urgent, uneven beats. The Vikings hear it. They quicken their pace. You stand near the path as they approach, tall, broad-shouldered men with determination etched into every line of their bodies. Their arrival is not merely a clash of cultures. It is a meeting of needs, a collision of worlds shaped by very different kinds of survival. The monks gather near the chapel door, their faces pale. A few raise crosses toward the approaching figures, not as weapons but as shields of faith. Their voices tremble as they chant prayers taught to them since childhood. Their words are soft, fragile, almost lost in the growing noise. Then the two groups meet. The impact is not loud. It is not even violent at first. It is simply overwhelming. A surge of bodies, movement, fear, confusion. The monks back away, gripping each other's sleeves. The Vikings push forward, breaking through the wooden door that splinters under the weight of force and momentum. Inside, the sacred silence shatters. The chapel fills with the sounds of scattering footsteps, falling objects, hurried breaths. Candles topple, pages tear, precious manuscripts slide across the stone floor. The air fills with the mingled sense of smoke, sweat, incense, and fear. You feel the sorrow in the walls, the shock in the air, the rupture of a world that believed itself protected by faith alone. Outside, villagers cry out, their voices rising and falling like waves in a storm. A few resist. Many flee. Children cling to mothers who try desperately to hide them. Tools become weapons, though they are no match for axes forged for hardship. The Vikings move through the settlement with urgency rather than cruelty. They grab what they need: silver, cloth, food, livestock. Their actions are swift, mechanical, dictated by necessity and the lack of time. They are not here to conquer. They are here to survive. Yet to the islanders it feels like the end of the world. The mist lifts slowly as the sun rises, revealing the full scope of the moment. A moment carved into history not because of the blood spilled, but because of the shock delivered. Lindisfarne, a place of peace, has become the first witness to a new age. Not a single person on the island had expected this morning to be different from any other. But now the world is changed, and the north has arrived. The morning mist has lifted just enough for the full weight of fear to reveal itself. The peaceful shapes of Lindisfarne, huts, stone walls, grazing fields, quiet paths, now ripple with movement, frantic and unsteady. You feel it before you see it. A tremor in the air, a tightening of breath across the island, a shift in sound from birdsong to panic. What had been routine only moments before is now swallowed by urgency. A monk runs across the courtyard, his robe catching on a corner of stone as he stumbles forward. His breath escapes him in quick, shallow bursts. His hands clutch a heavy, leather-bound gospel, held not like a book but like a lifeline. He looks over his shoulder often, wide-eyed, desperate, unsure where safety could possibly exist. His sandals slap against the damp stone, echoing against the cold walls that once promised protection. Another monk reaches out to steady him, speaking words you cannot hear, words meant to comfort or guide. But comfort is a fragile thing now. The younger man shakes his head and continues running, disappearing into the dim hallway where voices rise in prayer, then crack in fear. Beyond the monastery, smoke begins to curl upward, thin at first, then thicker, darker, shaped by the wind into twisting trails of warning. The scent of burning wood drifts across the island, carrying with it a bitterness that settles in the back of your throat. The fire has not yet consumed much, but in a place that has known centuries of silence, even a single flame feels like devastation. Villagers gather near the path that leads inland, their faces pale with disbelief. Some clutch children to their sides. Others hold farm tools as though they could shield them from the men who move through the settlement with swift, practiced efficiency. The farmers' hands are not made for fighting. They tremble against the wooden handles, knuckles whitening with fear. You feel their hearts beating too fast, too loud, as the world they thought unshakable cracks beneath them. A sheep bleats in terror nearby as the animals scatter, pushing against wooden fences that give way under the pressure. Carts overturn in the rush. Clay jars fall from shelves and shatter. Every small sound that once belonged to daily life becomes part of the larger chaos, reshaped by urgency and fear. The Vikings move with the precision of men accustomed to acting quickly. Their strides are long, their grips firm, their movements direct. They do not wander. They do not hesitate. They follow paths of instinct and need, pushing through doorways, checking storage huts, lifting lids of chests, taking what they can carry. Their breaths are the only constant rhythm, steady despite the storm around them. One man, broader than the others, enters a home with a shield slung across his back. The small house is empty, its occupants have fled. He glances around the dim interior, picking up tools, food, anything of use. His expression is unreadable, neither cruel nor compassionate. He is here for necessity, not vengeance. Still, to the people who call this island home, his presence is a rupture, a reminder that survival means different things depending on where you were born. In the chapel, chaos narrows into heartache. Candles lie toppled on the floor, their flames flickering against the stone before sputtering out. A monk kneels beside a shattered reliquary, his hands trembling as he gathers small fragments of gilded wood. His tears mix with the dust, his breath shaking as he tries to rebuild what cannot be restored. His lips move in prayer, though the words are drowned beneath the rising noise outside. Two monks brace themselves against the large wooden door, trying to hold it closed. Their shoulders strain, muscles trembling beneath rough wool robes. They murmur to each other, not in anger, but in fear, in confusion, in disbelief that their sanctuary could be breached. The wood shakes under impact. Dust falls from the ceiling. A hinge cracks. The monks look at one another, and in that moment you see their hearts break before the door does. When the Vikings push through, the room fills with the raw sound of bodies and boots, of breath and panic. The monks fall back onto the stone floor, their voices rising in a mixture of prayer and pleas. A few try to protect the scriptures, shielding them with their own bodies, clutching pages that flutter like trapped birds. The intruders move quickly, their eyes scanning for anything of value. Silver chalices, decorative crosses, illuminated manuscripts too beautiful to ignore. A small flame climbs one of the wooden beams overhead, started by a toppled candle. It grows slowly at first, then spreads with a hungry whisper. The monks scramble to smother it, but their efforts are frantic, uncoordinated. Smoke seeps into the rafters, darkening the ceiling, curling around stone pillars like a spirit rising. Outside, the alarm bell continues to ring, not with steady rhythm, but in uneven, desperate bursts. Someone pulls the rope too hard, then too weakly, then drops it to flee. The bell's voice breaks, becoming almost mournful. A group of villagers tries to escape down the western causeway, running across the sands exposed by the low tide. Their feet sink into the wet earth, slowing their steps. Behind them, others shout warnings, urging them to move faster, to keep running. A few fall, catching themselves on trembling hands before rising again. Their breath turns the air white with fear. One old man stops, turning back toward the smoke rising from the monastery. His eyes fill with grief, not for possessions or structures, but for the loss of safety, the loss of the world he thought would remain unchanged. He whispers something, maybe a prayer, maybe a goodbye, then forces himself to continue toward the path that leads away from the island's heart. On the rocky shore, the longship rests half in water, half on sand, its hull darkened by the tide. Some Vikings return to it with sacks slung over their shoulders, carrying silver cups, bolts of cloth, loaves of bread, anything they could find quickly. They load the ship with efficient hands, barely speaking. Their focus is sharp, shaped by the knowledge that they have limited time before resistance grows or the tide shifts. In the distance, more smoke rises. A barn catching fire, its dry hay bursting into flames that leap toward the sky. The wind pushes the smoke sideways, carrying it across the fields, across the marshes, across the trembling hearts of all who witness it. The orange glow reflects in puddles and wet stones, lending the landscape an eerie, flickering light. A mother kneels beside her child in the shadow of a stone wall, her arms wrapped tightly around him. She rocks gently, whispering soft words meant to soothe him, though her own voice shakes. She shields his eyes from the sight of running figures, from the glint of steel, from the flames that dance too close. Her heartbeat echoes through her embrace, quick, frightened, steady in its determination to protect. The monks who have escaped the chapel gather near a small garden, their robes stained with soot and dust. One holds a wooden cross pressed to his chest. Another carries a single manuscript that he managed to save, its pages fluttering in the wind. They look around in disbelief, their breaths shallow, their eyes searching for something familiar in a morning that has turned unrecognizable. Fear spreads across Lindisfarne not as a scream, but as a shattering. Soft at first, then sudden. Quiet in places, overwhelming in others. It moves through the island like a cold wind, carrying the understanding that peace is no longer something they can take for granted. The flames climb higher, the voices rise, and the world that once felt protected by prayer now trembles under the weight of survival. By the time the tide shifts again, the shape of the island has changed, not physically, but in spirit. The calm mornings that once seemed endless now belong to memory. The certainty that faith alone could shield them from harm has slipped away like smoke disappearing into the northern sky. The fall of peace is not marked by any single moment, but by the slow realization settling across the island. Nothing will ever be the same again. The smoke over Lindisfarne fades long before the fear does. What remains behind is a silence that feels heavier than the morning mist, settling across the island, settling deep into its people. But the world beyond these shores does not stay silent for long. Word carries quickly in kingdoms where news travels on weary feet and trembling voices, carried by monks who flee in scattered directions, seeking anyone who will listen. You feel the shift as the first messenger leaves the island. His robes torn, his sandals muddy, his eyes wide with disbelief. He moves quickly across the causeway, breath ragged, heart pounding with more than exhaustion. The words he must deliver weigh on him, and though he tries to steady himself, his voice breaks each time he repeats the story. Each step he takes sends a ripple outward, reaching places he has never seen. Through windy fields, across riverbanks, past small hamlets still waking from sleep, into towns where traders gather and farmers barter and no one yet knows how the world has changed. When he reaches the nearest settlement, the villagers gather around him in a loose circle. Their faces crease with concern as he speaks, recounting what he witnessed. The sudden arrival, the terror, the flames, the cries swallowed by the sea wind. Women place hands over their mouths. Men stare at one another, unsure how to respond. The fishermen grip their nets more tightly, glancing toward the horizon as though expecting the ships to follow. But the messenger does not stay. He continues his journey, traveling further south to monasteries where scholars transcribe his words into ink with shaking hands. Heathens attacked the Holy Isle. They struck the house of God itself. They came from the sea like spirits. The accounts are varied, each shaped by fear and urgency, but they share the same truth. The world is no longer safe where it once thought itself protected. You follow as the news moves inland, carried by riders whose horses sense the tension in their masters. Their hooves strike the road in rapid bursts, echoes of urgency spreading across England's countryside. The riders stop only long enough to deliver the message, then continue without rest. The stories reach noble households first. In wooden halls where lords dine on bread and salted meat, messengers kneel breathlessly before the hearth, recounting tales of flames rising from a holy place. The lords exchange glances sharp with alarm. Lindisfarne is not just an island. It is a symbol, a pillar of faith, a place believed too sacred for violence. How could such a thing happen? Who are these men from the sea? What does this mean for all of us? Questions rise like smoke, but answers do not. The fear is not only for Lindisfarne. It is for every unguarded village, every monastery with treasures hidden in its stone walls, every shore that faces the North Sea. You travel further, carried by the breath of the spreading news. When the message reaches York, the city stirs in unease. Traders whisper among themselves. Priests gather in dim, candlelit chambers, faces pale, hands trembling over open scriptures. They speak of prophecies, of omens, of punishment, of misunderstanding. Anything that might explain the unexplainable. But there is no explanation that brings comfort. The echoes cross the sea, borne by traders and sailors who dock in ports along the coast of Francia. There too disbelief blooms. In royal courts, where halls shimmer with tapestries and polished metal, the news lands heavily. Scholars murmur to one another, fingers tracing the edges of maps. Priests pale at the thought of holy places falling to strangers who come from the far cold. Frankish scribes write letters with trembling hands. The Northmen have grown bold. Their ships defy storms. They strike without warning. Across these kingdoms, the idea of invaders arriving by sea unsettles even the strongest hearts. Land-based armies can be tracked, predicted, resisted. But this, men who arrive in silence, without warning, leaving before resistance can form, this is new. This is unimaginable. You feel the tremor spreading through these lands. In one monastery deep inland, a group of young novices huddle around their teacher, listening as he reads aloud the account from a messenger who arrived only hours before. His voice shakes. The novices clutch their robes, wide-eyed, picturing the sacred place engulfed in chaos. But why would God allow such a thing? One whispers. The teacher has no answer. Fear does not grow loud in these halls. It grows quiet. It settles in whispers along stone corridors, turns prayers into pleas, turns confidence into doubt. In the courts of kings, fear takes a different form. Meetings stretch long into the night. Candles burn low as advisors argue about borders, defenses, patrols along the coast. Some dismiss the raid as an isolated event. Others warn that it is only the beginning. You listen to heated voices shaking with emotions they try to hide. Frustration, dread, uncertainty. A king rubs his temples with weary fingers. His crown rests on the table beside him, heavy with responsibility. He leans over a map, tracing the coastline with his thumb. If they came once, he murmurs, they will come again. No one disagrees. Messengers continue to arrive from the north, each carrying more details than the last. The speed of the ships, the strange carvings on the bows, the fierce discipline of the men, the swiftness of their retreat. Scribbled notes accumulate on desks. Monks compile them into chronicles that will outlive all who write them. You sense how the fear evolves, not into panic, but into caution, into strategy, into an understanding that the world has shifted. Beyond the halls and courts, ordinary people absorb the news in quieter ways. A farmer sharpening his sickle pauses, imagining the shadows of ships on the horizon. He glances at his wife and children, unsure what protection means anymore. A mother prays more fervently than she ever has, fingers trembling over her rosary. A blacksmith hammers harder, shaping stronger hinges, heavier locks. Fishermen scan the sea with wary eyes, no longer trusting the morning calm. The fear becomes woven into daily life, not loud, not overwhelming, but present, like a quiet echo that lingers long after the voice is gone. Across kingdoms, the raid becomes more than an attack. It becomes a message, a reminder, a warning, a tremor foreshadowing something greater. And though no one yet knows what form the future will take, everyone understands one truth. The North has stirred, and its echo reaches far. The longship cuts across the returning sea with a slow, steady grace, its hull heavy but triumphant. The North's cold breath sweeps over the deck, carrying with it the familiar scent of home, pine forests, salt wind, the lingering chill of distant mountains. The oars rise and fall in a gentle rhythm, not rushed now, but confident. You feel the shift in the men as they sail. Their shoulders sit differently. Their voices carry a deeper timbre. Their eyes hold the reflections of places far beyond their fjords. The journey back feels lighter, though the sea remains the same. The waves greet the ship with rolling swells, lifting it like a cradle. The men breathe more easily now. Some speak quietly with one another, sharing stories of the raid. Not with pride, but with awe, with disbelief, with the raw understanding that something inside them has changed. They had left home as hunters, farmers, and fishermen. They return as men who have seen another world. You walk among them, feeling their thoughts ripple through the deck. One man fingers a small silver cross taken from the monastery, turning it over in his hand. The metal shines faintly in the clouded northern light. He does not treat it as a trophy. He handles it gently, trying to understand its shape, its meaning, its value beyond its shine. The cross is foreign, strange, beautiful, a symbol of a world that had never been meant to cross paths with his. Another man adjusts the strap of a woolen cloak taken from a villager, sturdier than anything woven in his homeland. He touches the fabric, feeling the softness, admiring the craftsmanship. To him, it is not a spoil of violence. It is proof that something exists beyond their rocky shores, something worth traveling for. At the ship's stern, the steersman gazes toward the horizon, where jagged cliffs rise through the mist like ancient guardians. His face is weathered, his eyes calm, but within them lies a new fire, one sparked by curiosity, renewed by possibility. He grips the rudder more firmly, guiding the vessel toward home with the steady confidence of someone who has tasted a larger world and found himself equal to it. The closer they come to the fjord, the more the landscape sharpens into familiar shapes. Small farms speckle the coastline. Smoke threads rise from hearths. Sheep graze along ridges dotted with heather. All of it feels unchanged, yet entirely different through the eyes of those who return. When the ship rounds the final bend, voices carry from the shore. Families gather at the water's edge, their silhouettes growing sharper with each pull of the oars. Children race along the rocks, shouting to fathers they feared might never return. Women lift their hands to shield their eyes from the glare on the water. Elders lean on wooden staffs, peering forward with anticipation carved deep into their lined faces. A cheer rises as the longship's hull kisses the pebbled shore. The men step onto the land with a heaviness softened by relief. Some drop to their knees, pressing their palms to the earth. Others embrace their families with trembling arms, holding them for long moments without speaking. Tears slip down cheeks freely, unashamed. The sea takes much. It gives little. Returning home is always a blessing carved from uncertainty. You feel the warmth of these reunions spread through the village. Smiles bloom. Laughter returns. Voices blend with the steady sound of waves. But it is not long before the questions begin. What did you see? What did you bring back? Is it true? Did you really reach the Holy Island? Were the stories real? The men answer slowly at first, choosing their words with care. They speak of the long journey and the cold nights, of oars that blistered hands and winds that threatened to turn the ship back. They describe the island, its quiet, its peace, its riches beyond what they had imagined. They speak of the monks, of the fear in their eyes, of the treasures carved by hands unlike theirs. And as they speak, you feel the shift in the listeners. The villagers lean closer. They imagine ships crossing water to lands rich with silver and grain. They imagine trade. They imagine opportunity. The stories spread through the settlement like embers caught in dry grass. Even those who doubted the voyage now feel its power. Its promise. Inside one longhouse, a mother prepares a stew for her returning son, her eyes shining with pride and relief. He sits by the fire, warming hands that still carry the ache of rowing. She asks him what the world is like beyond the sea. He answers slowly, telling her of stone churches that ring with prayer, of fields green even before summer, of people who carry no weapons because they trust in peace. She listens with a mixture of wonder and concern. "Will you go again?" she asks. He does not answer at once. His gaze drifts to the fire, where flame licks at the wood with soft crackles. The silence between them grows thick. Then gently, honestly, he nods. Outside, the village hums with renewed energy. Blacksmiths examine pieces of foreign metal, imagining how their own tools could be improved. Women run their fingers along fabric softer than anything woven from northern sheep. Children touch carved trinkets with awe, their imaginations sparking with visions of distant lands. Even the elders, slow to accept change, cannot deny what lies before them. The sea they have always known as a border has become a bridge. Later, in the cool blue of evening, the men gather around a communal fire. Sparks rise toward the darkening sky. The fire's light flickers over their faces, highlighting the mixture of tiredness and pride etched into their expressions. They speak again, but not of violence. They speak of the journey, of the sea, of the possibilities waiting beyond the horizon. You feel the atmosphere shift, not toward greed, but toward ambition born from necessity and curiosity. These people have lived with hardship carved into every season. Now, for the first time, they glimpse a future shaped by choice, not only survival. The raid on Lindisfarne was not the beginning of cruelty. It was the beginning of awareness. Awareness that the world is wide. Awareness that wealth exists elsewhere. Awareness that ships can open doors to lands once only whispered about. You watch as the fire burns lower, glowing like a quiet heartbeat in the center of the gathering. The men stare into it with thoughtful eyes, their minds drifting not toward what they have done, but toward what could come next. They feel something awakening inside them. Not rage, not hunger for war, but possibility. The sea lies before them, dark and shimmering in the night. Path, a challenge, an invitation. And though the stars are cold above the fjord, the north feels warmer tonight, warmed by the spark of a people who have tasted the wider world and know, now, that they cannot turn back. They have crossed the sea, and they are changed. The wind moves over Lindisfarne with a gentler touch than before, as though it remembers the terror it carried on its back and now tries to soothe what remains. You feel it brush across the fields, soft and cool, bending the grasses that have begun to grow again, where footprints once left deep scars in the earth. Morning light returns with the same pale softness as always, but the island is different now. The silence has changed. The stillness holds memory. The smoke that once rose into the sky is long gone. The ashes have settled. The fires have cooled. Yet you see the marks left behind. Charred wood, cracked stone, doorways splintered by force. They are not loud scars, not the kind that scream for attention. They rest quietly in the corners of the island like old wounds that ache when touched. A monk walks slowly across the courtyard, his steps careful, his robe brushing lightly over the uneven ground. His face carries a tiredness that does not come from lack of sleep, but from something deeper, the weight of seeing the sacred shaken, the familiar undone. He pauses beside a broken pillar and runs his hand over the darkened surface, fingers tracing the rough edges. His touch is gentle, almost tender, as though comforting a friend. Around him, others work in silence. They lift fallen beams. They gather torn pages that drifted out of the scriptorium like frightened birds. They sweep soot from the stone floors, though some stains will never fully fade. Their movements are not rushed. They do not attempt to erase the past. They simply try to rebuild what can be rebuilt and accept what cannot. On the far side of the island, where the longship first touched the shore, the sand has shifted again under the tide. Only faint signs remain of the footprints left by men who came from the north, a few deeper impressions preserved by chance, already half softened by waves. The sea moves as it always has, washing away the evidence with patient, unhurried strokes. It does not remember, but the island does. A fisherman stands near the water, gazing toward the horizon. His net lies beside him, untouched. He has been there long enough for the tide to creep around his boots. His eyes carry something that was not there before, a watchfulness shaped not by fear alone, but by awareness. The sea no longer feels like a boundary to him, feels like a door that swings both ways. You notice how his breath deepens as he looks out, the morning light settling softly on his face. His hands tighten slightly at his sides. He has lived here his entire life, trusting the shoreline, trusting the calm. Now he understands that calm is a gift, not a guarantee. Further inland, villagers gather to rebuild what was lost. They share tools, share food, share the quiet comfort of each other's presence. One family replaces the thatch on their roof, passing bundles of dried reeds hand to hand. Another repairs a wooden cart, its wheels still muddy from the frantic escape. The sounds of work are steady and gentle, the tap of a hammer, the murmur of voices, the rustle of straw. These sounds feel like healing. Children play among the reeds, their laughter returning slowly like birds after a storm. They chase one another across the fields, unaware of how deeply the adults watch the horizon now. Their innocence softens the morning. It brings warmth where there could be only sorrow. Their footsteps leave temporary prints in the damp earth, prints the adults follow with eyes full of hope and fear. A monk kneels in the chapel, what remains of it, his head bowed low. The roof above him is partly gone, open to the pale sky, yet he prays with the same rhythm he held before the raid. His voice is soft, steady. The broken walls echo it, carrying it outward through the island like a slow ripple. You feel the strength in that quiet devotion. Not defiance, not denial, but endurance. A willingness to remain soft in a world that can be hard. You walk through the scriptorium. Its tables are scarred. Many manuscripts lie ruined or scattered. But in a corner, a single monk sits hunched over a fresh sheet of parchment. His quill moves carefully, shaping letters with patient strokes. He copies the stories that survived, preserving them again, line by line. His breath is slow. His hand does not shake. This is his way of saying that knowledge will not be lost to fear, that beauty can grow again, even from ashes. Outside, the sunlight begins to warm the stones. The mist drifts away, revealing the full shape of the island once more. You hear the soft bleating of sheep returning to the fields. You hear the gulls calling again, circling over the cliffs. Life creeps back into every corner, not with sudden energy, but with quiet persistence. Along the shore, the tide pulls out, exposing the wide, rippled sands of the causeway. The fishermen walk across it carefully, heading toward the mainland to share what happened. Their footsteps leave a line of impressions that stretch into the distance. A path of memory, a path of warning. Word spreads farther now, moving with the same urgency that once carried terror. But on the island, no one rushes. They move with the slow grace of people who understand that rebuilding takes time, that healing cannot be hurried, that the shadow of 793 will stretch long across their lives. You feel that shadow too. It reaches across the North Sea. It reaches across kingdoms. It reaches across years. But here, on the island where it began, the shadow does not bring darkness. It brings clarity. People speak more softly now, but with deeper thought. They watch the sea with new understanding. They hold their loved ones a little closer. They pray not for an unchanging world, but for the strength to face whatever may come. The morning grows brighter. The wind eases. The island breathes again. And as the sun rises over the quiet fields and the repaired walls, you understand the truth that settles over everyone here. Peace can fall. Life can break. But people can rise. The long shadow of 793 stretches across centuries, but it does not end the story of Lindisfarne. It begins it anew, in resilience, in memory, in the soft strength of those who survive and continue.